Hi everyone, I hope this finds you all well. Now, we talked in the meeting last week about the fact that you need a little bit more information about the presentation. I did provide a template at the end, and I did expect to hear from some of you about it, but I didn't. So I thought, or I only heard from one or two of you, I thought I'd just make this quick presentation just to give that little bit of extra information that I mentioned, and then hopefully that helps you. And if there's any questions, please feel free to get in contact. So I'll just go to the next slide. So essentially, this is the template for the presentation that I provided last week. Essentially, I would encourage you in a 10-minute presentation to have probably no more than 10 to 20 slides at the max, because you should spend a bit of time talking to each slide. In your presentation, I would encourage you to have a title slide, an overview of the presentation, then the things that you need to do to cover the content for the assignment. You need to, one, introduce consumer behaviour and explain its importance. So you need to imagine that you're talking to someone who doesn't understand what consumer behaviour is about and why it would be relevant for their business. And then the basis of the assignment is giving them an illustration of how they might use it. So talk about the fact that you're going to use personality archetypes. So introduce that theory. Describe what you can give a brief description about what it's about. You need to use references to do that from your research. When you do, once you introduce the archetypes, then just profile two types of consumers using those archetypes. So use the description. You can start by using a description from your textbook, but I'd like you to build on that description by doing some extra research and finding some extra information about those personality archetypes. Some of that might come from journal articles, but some of it might also come from the links that I provided in the online meeting presentation. To the organisations that use the brand archetypes. So they're not journal articles, but they're sort of evidence-based sources that I would encourage you to use to do that. Once you've profiled those two consumer personality types, then you can talk about how you're going to add a bit more information about those two consumer types by talking about what motivates them differently, how they're motivated. You can choose which type of motivation theory you want to use, but start by introducing motivation theory, talk about what it is, what motives are, why they're relevant. Then you can introduce the bit of theory that you're going to use, so whether that's Maslow's hierarchy or the internal or external motives or motivational conflict, for example. Then use that theory to describe what motivates each of the consumer types. Finally, explain how you might vary your 4P marketing mix for each type of consumer. So if you needed to motivate them, how might you motivate them and how might you influence your marketing mix to do that, or alter your marketing mix to do that? Or if you wanted to target that group, what considerations would you need to use in your marketing mix given their personality type and how they're motivated? Then just make 2 to 3 recommendations there. And then you have a conclusion where you just review the key points that you made in your presentation and summarise your key findings. And finally, you'd have a reference slide. Now, remember, you need to use evidence from your research to support your claims. You need to cite that in the text of your your presentation, and also provide a reference list at the end. If you're talking about theory, realistically, most of the theoretical sources you use should come from textbooks or from journal articles, with the exception of those sources that I mentioned earlier from the about the personality archetypes. Any source you need to cite it, but that depth of analysis and depth of discussion comes from reading journal articles and reading research that sort of delves in a bit deeper into the type of theory that you're talking about. Okay, finally, here's just talking through it just in a little slightly different way. So this is about the recommendations, and this is a part of an email that I shared with one of the students who contacted me. You need to make recommendations about how to change your marketing mix to motivate each type of consumer. The archetype is a way to characterize the consumers. Then motivation theory provides another level of information about each type of consumer. And so what you need to do is use that information to inform your marketing mix. So for example, if you're using the archetypes and Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you don't have to use that, but this is just for the sake of this example. Consumer 1 may fit into the warrior archetype, and you talk about what that means. They might be motivated by ensuring the safety of those around them. Consumer 2 might fit into the sage archetype, and they might be motivated by self-actualization. So which are different steps in Maslow's hierarchy. So how might you vary your marketing mix for each? For example, you might change the messaging to each. So say your product might allow the sage to realize their full potential, to achieve that state of self-actualization. But you might vary your marketing mix. Thank you. You might vary your marketing mix. Visitor. While the message to the warrior might be that it'll allow you to create the best environment for those that they love. So if you wanted to, you could choose a product. If it helped you to make, to explain how you might vary your marketing mix, you could just choose an example, a product or a service as an example to illustrate your point and just talk through the changes that you'd make. For instance, if you were selling health insurance, which part of your marketing mix might you alter or emphasize to tap into the motives of the two different consumers? That's one option, one way to do it, but you don't have to do it that way. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, please feel free to contact me and I'm happy to chat. Okay, guys, that's it for today. Thank you.